This is what it's going to look like when it's fully configured, and each one of these is going to have a LED strip on here. These are U Channel aluminium, and they're 3mm thick, which should work perfectly for heat sinking. And then this is unequal aluminium. The lengths, I'll put these all on the screen now, what the lengths of these are and what the length of these are. I know these are 2 inch wide by 1 inch deep. Although the strips aren't going to be as wide as this, the more metal you can have, the more heat sinking you're going to get. And you're going to need 2 more pieces of standard equal aluminium. These are 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch. And I'll turn this over now and I'll show you where these are going to go. This is where I'm going to make the driver and the control box. So you'll see that shortly. I'm just going to flip this around now and I'll show you what you're going to need for that. So now I've got this flipped upside down. So this is where this will be looking down at the light, and the strips will be underneath these here on the other side. With your equal aluminium, I'm going to be mounting these on the top here, on top of that one, dead centre, and that's where your driver's going to go and your control box is going to go. Then your mains cable will come out this side. So that's the aluminium you're going to need. Control box, what you're going to need, this is a standard light socket or plug socket, like back plate, or pattress them called, they could be known, and then just a normal blanking plate to go on that. I'll just put some aluminium tape around this, just so it blends in with the frame a little bit more. And I've put 2 grommets this side, one for that one's going to be for the dimmer lead, this one's going to be for where the plus and minus out to the LEDs are going to go, and then this side the lead's going to come out there and that's going to connect up to the LEDs, but all the electronics for the switch and the dimmer are all going to connect into this one box, just to make things a bit neater. So next I'm just going to, the switch I won't need to test, I'm pretty sure that'll work, but I will test that in a bit. What I've ordered is a 100k potentiometer, and usually the resistance on these is as they're supposed to be, but if the resistance is not right, I'll add another 10 ohm resistor in series with that, which I will show you that when I wire this all up, just to make sure that it is 100k potentiometer. I'll show you that now. I'm going to hook it up to a multimeter and I'll put it on the ohm setting and I'll show you what I mean with the potentiometer. So I'm just going to quickly test the ohms of this potentiometer. I've got the multimeter on my ohm setting, and then I'm going to have it on the middle is your common, and then you put your positive on there, or if you wanted it to dim the opposite way around, you'd put your positive on the side, that side. So when I got those on there, this one's reading 97.7 ohm. And if I turn this dial down now, you'll see ohms slowly going down, all the way down to 1.8 ohm. So it's pretty accurate, but if I go all the way up to the top, we're still not hitting exactly 100 ohm. We're getting to 97.7. So this is where I'll be using a 10 ohm resistor in series to bring the resistance up to, it should go to 107 ohm once I've had the resistor in series in this. So always worth a check when it comes to checking the resistance on your potentiometers, because they say 100k like this one, it's not 100k, it's actually 2k off, but it's always worth a check. So some of the parts list, some are optional, some you don't really need. You don't really need the dimmer box if you just want to run it full brightness, but it's entirely up to you. I've got a rivet gun and a few rivets. This is what I'm going to use to rivet the bars on the top to fit the driver in the electrical box. We've got a waterproof IP67 mains connector for connecting the driver to an extension lead. I'm not going to show that, you've also want an extension, just any 3-pin or 2-pin if it's US extension lead. We've got 22 gauge solid core wire. This is for wiring up the LED strips. And then the bolts I'm using for the main framework, I'll try to use bolts instead of rivets, just in case I ever want to decide I want to change the frame or take it apart for any reason. I'd rather use bolts and rivets. The bolts and nuts I'm using are M3, which are 3mm bolts, and then 3mm nuts, and they're 35mm long. That'll be enough to get through the U aluminium and the unequal on the top. Some different heat shrink when I'm doing up all the connectors on the main board on the top, where I'm going to fit the driver and the dimmer and the switch. All them I'm going to heat wrap, so no wires expired and nothing is short. And a 3.5mm drill bit for pilot holing for the bolts. So for the strips, I'm going to be using Samsung F strips. These are the 560mm strips to 56 centimeters, and I'm using their 3500K colour spectrum, which is like a mix of warm white and cool white. Quite an ideal spectrum for fruiting, flowering as well as vegging. Pretty much a all-rounder. These are Samsung. If you need the part number, just pause the video here and you'll be able to get a quick look at this. But I will leave a parts list for this. These are the LM561 LED diodes, I think, and they're about 171 lumens per watt. So that's the strips. I've got 5 of those. The driver is a constant voltage driver. This is the HLG 32048B. This outputs 6.7 amps at 48 volts. Each one of these strips will take 48 volts, which will share the 6.7 amps between these strips. All in all, it'll use about 320 watts. Next, I think that's all the parts I need to show you. If I've missed anything, other than some of the optional tools which aren't really needed but just make the job a little bit easier. So next I'm going to start constructing the frame, and then I'll record that for you to watch. Fairly basic, just standard drill bolt, but for anyone that hasn't done it, I mean, by no means am I professional when it comes to metal work or anything like that, but I'm just a DIY trying to show you how I'm going to do this for cheap. So I'm doing the first part of the frame now, which is going to be the first bit that I'm going to drill. On the corner bits here, where they're going to be is I've had a little template with the 2 X's. I just measured the reflection off the aluminium. I just measured what the width and length for this one was. Then divide that by 3 to give me my markers, and then half a length for that. But just to try and get them as equal as I can. Then I made a little length, and with that I can put my little poker, and then I can just knock a little hole. That's how I know where my hole's going to start. So that, try and make that as easy as I can for you. Try and get the tripod to not fall over. And then on the corner bit here, I've just got a 90 degree, whatever they're called. I'm not quite sure what they're called, but I put that up nice and square there. And I'm going to come along with one of these, a clamp. And I'm going to clamp this down to the workbench. I might just move it over slightly so I can get a good clamp on it. Probably disalign that now. So the corner looks nice and flush. And I'm going to clamp this on. Might be better if I actually put it square like that. Trying to get it close so you can see I'm doing this. a square as it will be. Now I'm just going to clamp this down. Try not to take it out of alignment while I do this. Bit fiddly this part. But once you've got your clamp nice and tight, it shouldn't move again now. Now it's on there. So you've got a nice flush corner now. So I'm going to get my 3.5mm drill bits, pop these in the drill and start drilling my first 2 holes. I've only marked the one so far just so I can show you how I'm going to do it. Then I'm going to go around and mark all the different ones. But I'll just give you a look at the first one that I'm going to do first. Well, I'm keeping my drill on the 1 setting. So now I've drilled that, I can get the edge of the drill bit in the hole that I just did, that I just knocked out. Try and hold your drill as straight as you possibly can, so then your bolts will go through nice and square. If you've got a hand drill like me, the easiest way would be put your hand on the top as you drill down, and then a bit of praying to the gods. So I'm just going to get this drilled nice and slow, not too fast, otherwise you'll snap the drill bit. Just try and get this through. Ideally you'd have something else underneath here so it doesn't draw through, but mine's on a workbench, so I don't really mind if some of it goes through. So now we've got that through, there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can either put the drill through when it goes to the bottom and then just mark a little, once you've got the drill nice and straight, you could just mark a little bit at the bottom and then go back afterwards and drill it again, which I think what I'm going to do, rather than drilling through in one go. But I'll decide which one I think is easy and I'll let you know which one. Just going to drill this second hole now. That's those 2 through now, and I'm going to try the first hole now and I'm going to drill it all the way through till I come out the bottom the other side, and I'll see if the hole stays nice and straight. So I've gone through there into a bit of the wood. That seemed like a decent way of doing it, so I'm going to carry on doing it that way, and I'll try and put a bolt in a minute and see exactly how straight that was. through. Clip that. I've used a Allen key head on mine. Use over your blunt, but I think these look nice because they look nicer rivet ones to go through. And I'm going to have that going under through there. So in the top, all you'll see is the bit that looks like a rivet. So I'm going to put both of these through. Put that down. Then line these through. Actually easier said than done. That's those through. Right. So I'll just get the tiny little nuts on there now. I mean, you can use washers. I haven't on this one because the holes are only 1/2 mil bigger than the actual bolt, so there's enough material around there for you to not worry about it collapsing. And plus it's 3 mil aluminium, so there isn't really much chance of it going through. So I'm just going to finger tighten these down. Then I'll come back with the bit underneath here, tighten these up. And if you put it up from the top view, you just see two Allen key heads which kind of look like a pop rivet. So that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to carry on doing this now until all the frame's complete, and then I'll bring you back. But all the way through the rest of the frame I'm going to be using the same principle as this. It's going to be no different all the way around. And if you people are wondering why I've left the bolt heads slightly coming out, once you have the LED strips on here, if I turn the light round it will hover slightly above the LEDs, so then hopefully nothing should touch the LEDs when I haven't got the light in use. So it just stops the whole frame sitting on the LEDs. The next job that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to get in these equal aluminium lamps here. Get these lined up, and this is where the driver is going to sit. So let's get that on focus. That's where the driver's going to sit there, and then the box that I've done with the 2 wires, the on-off switch, and the dimmer, it's going to sit this side. I think I'm going to have that quite close to the end there, then I can have the driver mounted quite central on the whole light. The way I've done it, the text is going to be upside down because I want the dimmer this side and the switch that side, but I could turn it around if I wanted to have it all the other way, but just the way I want it. Have it the way you fancy it, as long as you've got your connectors that go in there. From this one's the dimmer wire that will go in there. Then you've got your plus and minus LEDs, that one will go into there, which will be wired through the switch and then back out. This one will be wired to the potentiometer. And your normal mains cable there will be wired through this into an extension lead. First I'm going to get this on, and I think I haven't got any bolts short enough, so I think I'm actually going to rivet this framework onto there. So this is where I'm going to have the frame for the drivers. I'm going to be using 4 mil rivets. So I've got it's 3.8 mil rivets, so I've got a 4 mil drill bit. I should be able to get this on without having to actually clamp it. I should be able to just hold this. So I'm just going to drill that through. Now that's in. Let's pop rivet this in. Obviously you could use bolts if you wanted to. I haven't got bolts short enough, otherwise they're going to go right the way through the frame. So I've decided on this one I'm going to use pop rivets. But do whatever you want to use. I've just personally decided on this one. Pop rivets is what I fancy doing. I'm not sure if you know how to use a pop rivet, but you get different attachments on there. You put the thin end through there, and wherever the end is goes out of there, you're going to want the top bit, the bit that's showing, because the messy bit will be underneath. So I'm going to pop this in, and then you just pull until it snaps. Then all the excess comes out there. So I'm going to move over and do this one now. It seems like it's in position. Please be careful, I'll put my fingers there, but be careful when you're doing it because it's going to hurt if the drill bit hits you. Same process with this one, just making sure it's lined up okay. The rivet goes in. One snap, nice rivet. So, same with this bar now. Just make sure it's locked in. Sorry if my head keeps getting in the way. Just got to move this over until they're fairly equal each side. Ain't got to be perfect. Do it as good or as bad as you want. It's entirely up to you. Neater the better. Move the driver out of the way now. Now they are on. Show you from underneath. Underneath, I don't know if you can see those, they're just tiny little balls at the bottom. Turn that back round. That's a nice smooth channel now to put the driver and the control box. Swing these back in. I'm going to make that central, and I'm going to pop rivet this to this as well as the control box. It's going to be pop riveted. About that would probably be that setup where I'm going to have it. Rather have the driver centre in the middle, so it's equally balanced either side. Just makes the job a little bit easier. So I'm just going to measure this up now, and then I'll come back and put the driver onto the frame. So it's time to wire up the potentiometer now. With these ones, you have the blue lead on this wire is your plus, and then your white lead is your minus. On this particular driver, you can look on the driver and it will tell you which one's which. When it comes to wiring these potentiometers, your middle pin is always your ground, then your plus either side. I've scrubbed that one out, that blue pin, so I'm not going to solder that one, because I'm going to have mine, when it sits on the LED light, it's going to be turn right to turn it up, and then left to dim it down completely off. So on mine, that's these two connectors. If I wanted it on those two connectors, the other two connectors, what I'll be doing is I'll be turning right like that, and that would be making it dim, and then the other way would be making it bright. So it's whichever way you're going to have it orientated on your board, basically. So I've got my soldering iron heated up now. I'm just going to get this soldered up. Hopefully you're in frame so you can see it, and I don't knock it out the way. So I'll be close enough to see this. First I'm going to tin the actual connectors on the potentiometer. This wire out the way. Get that back in frame so you can see it. So I'm going to work on the centre pin first. These wires are already pre-tinned, but I'm going to chuck a bit more solder on those. Because there's not quite a lot there on, not much on there. Clear my soldering iron. See if this works a bit better now. Right there, tinned. Next I'm going to start with the negative, which I'm going to solder to the middle pin. A second to cool down. Now my blue, which is my plus wire on the dimming, I'm going to put this onto the end pin here. A second to cool down, that's it. Turn the solder iron off just for a second. Move this out that way. Now I've got that there. I've already placed some heat wrap around here, which I think I've already just melted some. Yep, some heat shrink around there. I've just got to try and get that to go around the pin, which is very awkward because I've just melted, there we go, melted it. I'm going to have to snip some of that off. So I've just cut a bit of that off because I had the heat shrink too close. So obviously while I soldering it started melting as well in there. So I'm going to put that on like that till it covers the terminal. Same with this one. Just so they don't end up ever touching. Because if these two touch together, it'll just dim the whole lot down to 0%. Just got to try and heat wrap these on there. There's one. Two. That's how it's connected on. Now I've got one final piece of heat shrink, that I've put on, which I'm going to use to cover the terminals again. there we have a fairly solid connection to potentiometer. Next I'm going to start on the power wires for the on-off switch. So now I'm just going to solder these little Spade connectors, which are for the switch at the back here. Those Spade connectors. They do come with like a sheathing on where you can crimp them down, but I prefer to use a solder joint rather than a crimp joint. So I'll sit that in there, and then I'll flood this with solder. Sorry if the camera keeps going out of focus. I'm trying to get it to focus, but it doesn't want to do it. I know you can't see that very well on the camera. For some reason it's gone out of focus. But that joint there is flooded with solder now. See, all in all, it's a better connection. Let's take that off. If you can see that better. That's a much better connection than it would be if I tried to do the crimp. I've never seemed to be a fan of crimp connections. So that'll cool down a second. And then I'll put the sheeting over it. Just got to quickly do that off camera so I can get it to go on. Let's get the jacket pretty much right to the top if I can. Now I'm trying to get this coming out in. So I'm just going to heat this up now. And then we have a nice solid power connection for the LED at the DC out, which is going to be, let's bring the camera up, it's going to be up to here onto one of the silver pins, which will be that. On the switch you've got 3 different pins. You've got your switching pins, which are your 2 silver pins. And then you have the other one, which is the gold or brass kind of colour one. That's the one your earth. So if you did want this to actually light up, you'd have to cut this to an earth. Otherwise the LED won't illuminate in there. As this is a 48 volt system, I didn't really want to connect it up because the LED will probably just pop if I did try to run it through the 48 volts. So for me, I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it out. I'm not too bothered about having the LED powered up as long as the switch works, to be honest, yeah. So next step is I'm going to add the other power connector to this for the LEDs out. So now I'm going to start measuring out some of the cable. I'm going to have these all going to be wired. The LED is going to be wired in parallel because it's a constant voltage driver. So all pluses to pluses and all minuses to minuses. I'm sticking with just one wire. So I will be marking little label on so I know which ones are coming from which. But the black there, which is your negative, I'm going to have 5 negative wires coming off that. And where the positive is there, I'm going to have 5 positive wires coming off that. So 10 wires on all are going to come out. And all going to join to these master wires here. So I'm just going to get them measured up in lengths. Basically I'm going to have like, that LED is only going to take about that much wire. And then I'm going to measure it round from there out to the next one. Leave myself plenty of excess and I can neaten up later when I actually get into the LEDs. So I've got 3 sets of wires now. I've got this pair here measured, which will be the first 2 to go in, and they'll go down to the first LED. Then I've got these 4 wires, which will be 2 that will go in there. They'll go down the frame and reach in to meet that LED there. Then I've got another one for the same side there. And then I've cut 4 longer wires, which will go from there under the frame out to the last LED. That's all the wires. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this down. I'm going to thread all the wires together. I'm going to get my my little tool that'll do this. I'm going to get all the wires, and they're all going to go into, well, I'm going to have one of each wire first, going into pluses and then going into minuses. So basically all the pluses, all these wires, the pluses are going to go together on one terminal, and all the minuses are going to go together on one terminal. So now I'm going to get all the plus wires, put them all together, solder them, and then I'm going to do the same with the negatives, solder all the negatives together, and then get them to these terminals here. So I'll leave the camera rolling while I'm doing this. You've got one of the small ones for the first one, and then we're going to get 2 more of the ones which will be a plus and another plus for over there. Then we're going to get 2 more of the biggest wires, which is a plus for this side and a plus for the one over the end there. You can, I've seen people go, like they put one there on the first LED, then they'll loop the pluses across, but me personally, I think that's probably not the best way to do it, because all the current of the for the LEDs is running through like one little cable rather than it running through all these in one go. So that's all my wires bunched up together. Now I'm just gonna get these soldered up, and these are gonna be my positive wires. I'm gonna solder them to the positive terminal, which is my brain wire on here now, and then I'm gonna do the same and solder it all to the negative. Let's bring you back down here so you can see my terrible soldering once more. Right, so all these, they're all going to go together. See if I can bring you around this way this time. See if it's any clearer. Just got to heat the soldering iron up. While I'm waiting for that to solder up, I'm going to join all the other ones of these together as well. As if I didn't lose a wire. There he is. Same process I did with these, I'm going to connect all the wires up together. I've just got some pliers on these just to twist them all together. And I've got my positive, all my positive terminals are going to come off there. This one's going to be all my negative terminals. Soldering iron takes a few minutes to warm up. The wire I'm using is 22 gauge wire. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before, but combined, as you can see, they do combine to a pretty thick pile. If you can see it on the camera there, probably equivalent to, if not more than, the actual wire that comes out the driver. And then it's split between 5 different boards. Each board's only getting about 1.3 amps. So this 18 gauge wire, although it looks thin on its own, it can handle up to 7 amps easily, this 22 gauge wire. So combined it can hold a lot of amps. Easy enough to run these Samsung LED strips. Soldering iron seems like the temperature now, so I'll get on to soldering all the positive terminals. Then we've got a nice solid block of all the positives there. Same with this one. Could have done with twisting that one a bit better. That's those done. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on getting all these connected up, and what I'm going to use for that is this little chocolate block connectors, I call them, or connector terminal blocks, whatever you want to use. Can use Wago's, but add this line about, so I'm going to use this. I'm going to connect these up to the plus and negative terminals on this. Makes a nice solid connection. Then I'm going to feed my wires in through here. These are the negative group. So they're going to follow in with the negatives in there. Nice tight connection. They're all into the block, as you can see. Let's move out of the way. Next, this is the positive, which I've got wired up to the switch there. So I'm going to wire that into the terminal block. Nice connection there. Then we're going to get a other set of wires that we soldered up. Try and get them through there. Tight fit. Get those hooked in through the connector. Which decided to give me a bit of grief this time. Seems to have it. I clamped that nice and tight. Then I can put this box on and it can stay down for good. First though, to make things easier for myself, I'm gonna get these separate. I'm gonna put a little bit of red heat shrink on the plus terminals, so now I know which one's which. That box is gonna go down there, out of the way. So I'm gonna get this round through all these ones. Probably take this off later, but I'll probably just leave it on there, just so it gives me a little bit of a idea which one's which. So I'm just going to get this box screwed back on, and that completes Mars Electrics, other than just bolting the putting the connector into the LED strips. That's it. So I'll give you a quick idea of how I've done the wiring. The wires have come through and split into 2 packs. 5 positives and negatives that side, 5 positive and negatives this side. I've just heat shrunk them down just so it looks more tidy than separate wires. And then it comes up through here, and you've got the plus and minus there. These all measure so the plus and minus there, and then the same on this one for the last one, plus and minus. I'll just put little red little sleeves on the outside of these, just so I remember which one's which. And the same with that one. So I'm just going to I'm going to wipe these down with some metal wool, steel wool, whatever you want to call it, and then I'm going to get the LED strips mounted. So I'm just going to demonstrate putting the LED cobs on now. The wires I've already pre-terminated ready, so I've just got to stitch tab. This is 40mm tape I'm using. The strips are 38, so I will be having to cut a bit of the excess off this, but this is thermal tape, and once this is on you will not be able to get the LEDs back off. Well, you will, but it'll take a good bit of pressure to try and get them off, and you risk breaking the chips then, so I suggest you try and get this bang on first time. So I'm going to get this tape on now, place the strip on, and then I'll wire the one up, and then I'll bring you back once I've got it all taped up. I'll just show you the process of doing the one. Just try and get it as equal as you can. Like, so there's our process. If you can do a better job than me, you probably can, to be honest with you, go for it, but I'm doing it to the best of how I think I can do it. So that's fairly central. I'm just gonna press this tape on best I can. I forgot to mention before this clip, I did use some wire wool, and I give these a bit of a brush down, and that just gives it a bit better of a place for the, it makes the adhesive stick on a little bit better. So I feel I've got a fairly good adhesion there. So I'm going to peel this, get my LED out. The Samsung F strip. You have got connectors either side on this, so you can use whichever side you please. I'm just going to keep mine all with the Samsung logo facing that way. It's entirely up to you really. Once the light's turned on, it's going to matter if it's that way or that way really, but I'm just going to place someone like this. Let's get this adhesion off. It can be a bit tricky when you've got no nails. Almost feels like peeling a new screen protector off you when you buy a new phone. So like I said, this is like a one-shot deal. Once it's on, it's quite hard to get off, so you've got to try and get it as accurate as you possibly can. But when you place this on, if you can try and help it, try and push down on the white part rather than pressing down on the LEDs. So now I'm just gonna go around with my knife, and I've got a bit of spare around here, which honestly I could leave on, but I'm just going to cut it off and a bit spare on the ends. So I'm just going to cut these off and see if I can manage to peel this off okay. Now that ends up, I should be able to get that off. And I'm just going to continue doing that till all the light strips on. So the final process is just getting all these wired in. What I did when I did these wiring, I've got my, I've already cut these to size, my two shortest wires, which I've got underneath here. I'll put a little red sleeve on that one and black on that one, so I know which one is plus and minus. So I'm going to bring these down. With these connectors, it just pushes in. Maybe I should have got you the better angle. I'll bring you around here. These connectors, the sheathing just pushes straight in. If you've got solid core wire, just until you feel it grab, then once it's in, you shouldn't be able to pull those back out. If you do ever need to release them, you just press down on the little, there's a bit on the top there, you push your nail down on that and then pull, it'll come out. So they are quite easy to get out or change if you ever need to do so. There's the first one connected. I'll do the same with this one. Try not to get in your way on this one. I've got two more shorter wires. Well, about medium sized wires. Same with this one. Plus connector. And it just pushes in until you feel it stop. Same with your negative. Push in until you feel it stop. That's it. Then give them a little tug. Make sure they're not coming out. All these wires are going to be tidied up later. Probably going to have them something like that stuck down there with some hot glue or something, or just something to hide the wires. They'll all be tucked away. So when it comes to mounting this light, I'm going to be using 4 of these ratchet strap hangers. So first I'm going to find my centre point between here. I'm going to have 4 hangers all in all. We've got 9 centimetres across there. So I'm going to split that in half to give us 4.5, and then I'm going to make my little mark of where I'm going to drill my hole out. There's 4.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my caliper and find out what the width of these are, so I know what size hole to drill. So according to caliper, these are 4.6mm, so I'm going to drill a 5mm hole in 4 places all around the frame, and then it'll be penny supported by these ratchet holders. So now I've got my 5mm hole drilled. I can get rid of the tape mark, and then your ratchets will go through, and then you'll have 4 of those connected, and that should be a nice solid hold. So I've got this light dimmed down all the way at the minute. At the moment, on the lowest it's running 12.2 watts. So I'll try and keep that in focus, and I'll turn the light up and show you the full wattage. So full brightness, we've got 322 watts. This will slowly go down as it heats up, but Let's quick look at the light now. Hung up from 4 different hangers. Just got it hung onto the thingy, but if this was like a grow tent, you could just have both these hung up on the pole like you would do 2 normal hangers, but you're fixed at 4 places now. The switch does work on, off, on, and as you've just seen, the dimmer works. So full brightness again. We're still at 321, near enough 322. So I'm gonna let this run for a while now, and then I'll come back and show you the wattage once it's warmed up a little bit, and I'll do a few temperature measurements as well. So I've had this light on for about a good 30 minutes now, so it should be fully warmed up. We're still at 320 watts. I tried to test it with the heat gun, but the aluminium wasn't giving me a very good reading. So I've put some little strips of black tape so I can get a better reading. So I'm just going to test some of these out with the heat gun and see what kind of temperatures we're getting. If I put it on the aluminium, see if I can get you a good view. That's on the aluminium, not giving me a very good comparison. Now if I point it onto the black dots, we're getting, the most I've seen is 44 so far. .41 there, 42. So I'll just come over here and check this one. .47 I've seen then. I could do a more accurate way of reading this, but these are usually pretty accurate. I'm just going to turn this light off and then I'll retest it. Maybe the light's giving it false readings. So I'll start with the outside bar. .42. The most I've seen is 47 so far. So I'll bring you around here. Rough idea. The driver stayed fairly cool at the minute. I mean, where this is used, there will be fans blowing out this anyway, so that will keep it slightly cooler. If I hold the bars, I can easily put my hands on them, and they're warm, slightly warmer than my hands, but nothing I'd say is uncomfortable to hold. I could happily sit there and hold that. Doesn't really get hot. So this U channel seems to work because it is pretty thick. But I would have used heatsink, but the extruded heatsink over in the UK is pretty much non-existent. I looked everywhere for it and I couldn't really find it. So the best thing I could find was the U channel aluminium. So that seems to be working okay. So that's about it for this light. I hope this is if someone else wants to build one, I hope this helps. If you've got any questions, leave a comment below. Please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you like this content, because I do try and produce anything growing, anything grow lights, anything garden related. I tend to post on my channel. So thanks for watching. Till the next time, take care.